Welcome to Hearths of Myths. Today, the sky turns gray and the air grows heavy. We are walking the complete path of the thunder god, Thor. Close your eyes, settle in, and let the storm begin. Listen closely. Can you hear it? It begins not with a sound, but with a pressure, a heaviness in the air that presses against the skin, a static charge that raises the fine hairs on your arms. The sky, once a canvas of limitless azure, begins to bruise. It turns a deep, sullen violet, then a charcoal gray that seems to swallow the light of the sun. The birds fall silent, retreating into the deep canopy of the forest. The wind holds its breath, and then a low rumble. It starts in the soles of your feet, a vibration that travels up through the earth, through the roots of the ancient ash trees, before it ever reaches your ears. It is the sound of boulders grinding together deep within the throat of the world. It is the sound of the sky tearing open. It is the sound of the guardian. To the ancient Norse, living in the fjords where the mountains plunge sharply into the icy sea, this was not merely a meteorological event. It was the chariot wheels of a god. It was the sign that the barrier between the chaotic wilderness of the Mjölnir and the ordered sanctuary of the gods was being defended. Tonight, we journey into the heart of that storm. We journey to the realm of Thrudvangur, the plains of strength, to witness the life, the labors, and the legacy of the most beloved of all the Aesir, the red-bearded one, the hallowed god, Thor. Before we can understand the god, we must understand the world that necessitated his existence. In the cosmology of the North, reality was a fragile island of order, surrounded by a vast, encroaching ocean of chaos. This chaos was embodied by the Mjölnir, the giants, beings of primal force, of winter, of rock and rime ice, who sought constantly to return the universe to the primordial void of Ginnungagap. Against them stood the Aesir, the gods of civilization, law, and consciousness. And at the forefront of this eternal war, standing as the singular, immovable bulwark, was Thor. His origins are as majestic as the natural forces he commands. While many of the gods trace their lineage through complex and sometimes obscure genealogies, Thor's parentage is a map of the cosmos itself. His father was Odin, the All-Father, the Lord of the Gallows, the god of wisdom, poetry, and war. Odin represents the sky, the breath, the intellect, the high, untouchable aspect of divinity. But a storm cannot exist solely in the high ether. It must touch the ground. It must have weight. And so, Thor's mother was not Frigg, the queen of Asgard. His mother was Jord. In the Old Norse tongue, Jord means simply and profoundly earth. She was a giantess, accepted among the gods, representing the uncultivated, wild, fertile land itself. Think of the significance of this union. Odin is the wind and the spirit. Jord is the mountain and the soil. When the sky lies with the earth, the result is the storm. Thor is the physical bridge between the heavens and the terrestrial world. He is not distant like his father, wandering in disguise or sitting high on the throne of Hlidskjalf. Thor is grounded. He is of the earth. This is why, in the Sagas and the Eddas, while Odin was the god of kings and earls, Thor was the god of the carl, the free farmer, the worker of the land. He was the god of the people who felt the rain on their faces and the mud on their boots. Born of this union, Thor grew not in the golden palaces of his father, but, as we might imagine, in the wild spaces between realms. The myths tell us he grew rapidly, his strength manifesting early and with terrifying intensity. In the prologue of the prose Edda, Snorri Sturluson, writing in the 13th century but drawing on ancient oral traditions, describes the young Thor. He writes that his hair was redder than gold, and his eyes burned with a light that few could bear to look upon directly. This red beard and red hair are crucial to his image. They are the color of the lightning flash, the color of vitality, the color of blood and life. As he reached maturity, he was granted his own realm within the borders of Asgard. This realm is known as Thrudvangur, the field of power, or plains of strength, and there he built his hall. If you close your eyes, you might envision the great halls of kings you have seen in history books, wooden beams, long hearths. But Thor's hall, Mjölnir, defies mortal architecture. The Grimness Mall, a poem found in the poetic Edda, describes it with specific, staggering numbers. It has 540 rooms. It is the largest building ever known to have been constructed. The name Mjölnir is thought to mean lightning cracked, or the flashing of light, suggesting that the very structure of his home is composed of the energy of the storm. Imagine walking through those 540 rooms. The air smells of ozone and roasted meat. The walls are lined with shields that hum with latent power. This is not a place of quiet contemplation like Odin's Valhalla. It is a fortress of noise and life, a domestic space that is also a military outpost. Here, Thor lives not as a solitary warrior, but as a family man, a detail that softens the rough edges of the giant slayer. He took a wife, the goddess Sif. Sif is a figure of immense beauty and mystery in the primary texts. We know her primarily for one defining attribute: her hair, which we will speak of in great detail later, for it is the catalyst for the creation of Thor's greatest weapon. Sif represents the golden grain of the harvest, the autumn fields waving in the wind. Again, we see the agricultural connection. The thunder god marries the grain goddess. The rain of the thunderstorm is violent, yes, but without it, the grain cannot grow. Their marriage is the meteorological cycle that allows civilization to survive. Together, and through other unions, Thor fathered children who embody aspects of his own nature. With the giantess Jarnsaxa, whose name means iron dagger, invoking the cold, hard nature of the mountains, he fathered Magni. Magni means the mighty, or strength. It is said that at 3 nights old, Magni was stronger than any other god, a prodigy of raw power. We also find Modi, whose name means wrath or courage. He represents the berserker fury of the storm, the adrenaline of battle. And there is a daughter, Thrud, born to Sif. Her name means power, strength, wrath, and power. These are not merely names, they are the constituent elements of the thunder. But a god, no matter how strong, is defined by his tools, and Thor possesses 3 great treasures that make him the undisputed champion of the Aesir. The first, and most famous, is the hammer, Mjölnir. But before we delve into the saga of its creation, which is a tale of malice and craftsmanship, we must understand what Mjölnir is. In the Gylfaginning, the High One tells us that Mjölnir is the thing the frost giants fear most. When it is raised, hope dies in the hearts of the enemies of Asgard. It is not just a weapon of war, it is a hallowing instrument. It was used to bless weddings, to consecrate boundaries, and to restore the dead. It is a tool of creation as much as destruction. However, the hammer is heavy. It is so heavy that even Thor, with his divine strength, requires assistance to wield it effectively. This brings us to his other two, often overlooked possessions. The first is Mjölnir, the belt of strength. The Eddas tell us that when Thor buckles this belt around his waist, his Asmegin, his god strength, is doubled. Imagine that. The strongest being in existence, fastening a strap of leather and iron, and suddenly becoming twice as potent. It is the reserve of power, the surge of energy that comes when the storm reaches its peak intensity. The second item is Jarngripr, the iron gloves. Snorri Sturluson notes that Thor must wear these gloves to grasp the handle of Mjölnir. Why? Some interpretations suggest the handle is too short, a result of a flaw we will explore, or that the hammer becomes red hot when thrown, or simply that the cosmic force channeled through the weapon would shatter even divine flesh without protection. The gloves represent the discipline required to wield absolute power. Power without control, without the iron grip, is dangerous to the wielder. Now, let us picture the god of thunder in motion. He does not ride a horse like Odin, whose 8-legged steed Sleipnir glides across the sky. Thor is too heavy for a horse. The Grimnismal tells us that while the other gods ride over the Bifrost Bridge to judgment each day, Thor must wade through the boiling rivers Kormt and Ormt, and the 2 rivers of Karlofgar. If he were to step onto the Rainbow Bridge, the Bifrost, it would shatter under his heat and weight. He is too intense for the delicate magic of the bridge. Instead, when he travels the skies, he drives a chariot. This chariot is made of iron and bronze, and it is pulled by 2 massive goats, Tangrisnir and Tanjoster. Their names are evocative tongue twisters. Tangrisnir means teeth-bearer, or the snarler. Tanjoster means teeth grinder. These are not the docile animals of a petting zoo. These are beasts of burden with eyes like burning coals, their hooves striking sparks against the clouds, creating the lightning that precedes the thunder. There is a profound magic to these goats recorded in the Gylfaginning, which speaks to the cycle of sustenance. Thor, often traveling far from the comforts of Asgard, requires immense amounts of food to fuel his strength. When evening comes and hunger gnaws at his belly, he does the unthinkable. He slaughters his goats. He skins them, puts their meat into the pot, and roasts them for his dinner. He invites his companions to eat, breaking the bones of the feast. But, and this is the supreme condition, the bones must not be broken. The marrow must remain sealed. The next morning, Thor rises with the dawn. He takes his hammer, Mjölnir, and raises it over the pile of skins and bones. He blesses them, and in a flash of divine reconstruction, the goats spring back to life, their flesh knit together, their breath returning, ready to pull the chariot once more. This is a powerful image of the regenerative power of the earth. The storm destroys, but it also feeds. The goats are the eternal sacrifice, the resource that can be used but never used up, provided one treats the remains with respect. We will see later, in the journey to Utgard-Loki, What happens when this sacred rule is violated by a careless mortal? So we have the image of the god, red-bearded, eyes of fire, riding a chariot of iron pulled by resurrecting goats, wielding a hammer that crushes mountains, wearing a belt that doubles his strength and gloves of iron. He is the warden of the world. But how did he acquire this hammer? How did the greatest weapon in Norse mythology come to be? To answer this, we must turn our gaze from the high halls of Thrudheim to the dark, subterranean forges of the dwarves, and we must introduce the agent of chaos who, paradoxically, gifted the gods their greatest assets. We must speak of Loki. The story is found in the Skaldskaparmal section of the Prose Edda. It begins not with war, but with a prank, a violation. One night, while Sif was sleeping, Loki, driven by his insatiable need for mischief, crept into her bedchamber. With a sharp knife and silent hands, he shore off her magnificent golden hair. He left her bald, stripping her of her vanity and her symbol of fertility. When Thor awoke and saw his wife weeping, her head shorn, the sky did not just turn gray, it turned black. His rage was instantaneous. He knew, instinctively, who was responsible. Only one being in Asgard possessed such a specific blend of malice and stupidity. Thor found Loki and seized him. The text implies a level of physical violence that is visceral. Thor threatened to break every bone in Loki's body, one by one. Terrified, dangling in the grip of the thunder god, Loki swore an oath. He promised that if Thor spared him, he would go down to Svartalfheim, the home of the black elves, the dwarves, and convince them to make Sif a new head of hair, not of wool or silk, but of pure gold that would grow from her scalp like natural hair. Thor released him, and Loki descended into the dark. He found the sons of the dwarf Ivaldi, master craftsmen of the deep earth. True to his word, he convinced them to forge the hair. To show off their skill, they also made two other gifts: Skidbladnir, a ship for Freyr that could fold up into a pocket and always had a fair wind, and Gungnir, the spear that would eventually belong to Odin, which never missed its mark. But Loki, never content to leave well enough alone, saw an opportunity for profit. He saw two other dwarves, brothers named Brokur and Sindri. He approached them, holding the treasures from the sons of Ivaldi, and taunted them. He wagered his own head, a classic Loki gamble, that Brokur and Sindri could not make 3 treasures to match the ones he already held. The brothers accepted the challenge. They were proud smiths, and the insult stung. They went to their forge. Sindri, the master smith, put a pig skin into the furnace. He turned to Brokur, who worked the bellows, and gave him a strict command. Do not stop pumping. Do not break the rhythm of the air, not for a moment, until I take out what I have put in. Sindri left the room. Brokur began to pump. The heat rose, the bellows wheezing and groaning. Suddenly, a fly landed on Brokur's arm. It was a massive, biting fly. Loki in disguise, desperate to win his wager and save his head. The fly bit deep into the dwarf's skin, drawing blood. But Brokur did not stop. He kept the rhythm. Sindri returned and pulled from the fire Gullinbursti, a boar with bristles of gold that could run through air and water better than any horse. illuminating the night with its glow. Next, Sindri put gold into the furnace. Again, the command, "Do not stop." He left. Brokur pumped. The fly returned, landing on Brokur's neck. It bit harder this time, tearing the flesh. Brokur winced, but he did not falter. The bellows sang their steady song. Sindri returned and pulled out Draupnir, a magnificent gold ring. Every 9th night, 8 other rings of equal weight would drip from it. It was the source of endless wealth. Finally, Sindri put a piece of iron into the furnace. "This," he said, "is the most important one. Do not stop, or all is ruined." He left. Brokur pumped. The fly, Loki, now in a panic, landed on Brokur's eyelid. It bit down with vicious force, stinging the sensitive skin. Blood ran down into Brokur's eye. He was blinded. The pain was searing. For just a fraction of a second, instinct took over. Brokur raised his hand to swipe the blood from his eye. The bellows paused. The air died. The fire dipped. Sindri rushed back into the room. "You almost spoiled it," he cried. He pulled the iron from the coals. It was a hammer. But because the bellows had stopped for that split second, the handle was short. Too short for a two-handed grip. It looked, to the untrained eye, like a mistake, a ruined piece. Loki laughed. He took the treasures and returned to Asgard, confident he would keep his head. The gods assembled on their judgment seats, Odin, Thor, and Freyr, to decide which gifts were best. Loki presented the hair to Thor for Sif. It attached instantly and shone like the sun. He gave the spear Gungnir to Odin, and the ship Skidbladnir to Freyr. The gods were pleased. Then Brokur produced his gifts. He gave the ring Draupnir to Odin. He gave the golden boar to Freyr. And then he approached Thor. He handed him the short-handled hammer. He explained its properties. It would never break. If thrown, it would never miss. If thrown, it would always return to the thrower's hand, and it could shrink to fit inside a shirt. But, he apologized, the handle was short. Thor gripped the hammer. He felt the weight of it. He felt the balance. The flaw in the handle did not matter. The power within the iron was absolute. The gods conferred. They looked at the threats gathering on the horizon, the frost giants, the mountain giants. They looked at this weapon, Mjölnir, the crusher, and they declared it the greatest gift of all. It was the best protection against the enemies of the Aesir. Loki lost the wager, but, in typical Loki fashion, he kept his head, arguing that to take his head, the dwarves would have to cut his neck, which was not part of the deal. The dwarves, frustrated, settled for sewing his lips shut with a leather thong, silencing the trickster for a time. Thus, Thor stood in the hall of Bilskirnir, his wife's beauty restored, and his hand wrapped around the handle of Mjölnir. The guardian was armed. The storm had its thunderbolt, and the adventures that would define the Viking age were about to begin. But even a god needs a vehicle to cross the vast distances of the 9 realms. We will look closer at the beasts that pull the thunder. We will look at the chariot that rattles the firmament, and the deeper meaning behind the goats that die and rise again. If you stand on the edge of a cliff in the darker months of the year, when the Atlantic winds are whipping against the stone face of the mountain, you hear a specific kind of dissonance. It is not just the howling of the gale, it is a clattering, a tumbling of loose scree, of rocks dislodged by the storm, bouncing down the ravine. To the modern ear, this is gravity and erosion. To the ancient ear, this was the passing of the chariot. We have spoken of the god, and we have spoken of the hammer. Now, we must speak of the engine. Unlike his father Odin, who wanders the world in silence, wrapped in a blue cloak, disappearing into the mist like a thought forgotten, Thor is a god of noise. He is the deity of presence. You cannot ignore a thunderstorm. You cannot pretend it is not there. It demands your attention, your respect, and your awe. And the source of this noise, in the grand theater of the Norse cosmos, is his chariot. The primary texts do not give this chariot a proper name. Unlike the ships and swords of the gods, it is simply the vehicle of the storm. But we can imagine it based on the archaeological finds of the Bronze and Iron Ages. It is not a delicate, ornamental carriage made for parades. It is a war engine. Its wheels are shod in iron, heavy and scarred. When they roll across the clouds, which are solid terrain to the gods, they create the rumbling bass notes of the thunder. But a chariot is dead weight without the beasts that pull it. And here we find one of the most fascinating and archaic symbols in all of mythology. Thor is not pulled by stallions. He is not pulled by wolves or eagles. He is pulled by goats. Their names are Tangrisnir and Tanjoster. Let those names settle in your mind. Tangrisnir means the one who bears his teeth, or the snarler. Tanjoster means the one who grinds his teeth. These are aggressive, visceral names. They conjure the image of beasts that are constantly on edge, constantly moving, their jaws working, their eyes wide and wild. Why goats? In the harsh landscape of Scandinavia, the goat is a survivor. A horse requires pasture. A horse requires flat ground. A goat can climb the steepest precipice. A goat can eat the bark off a tree, the moss off a stone. A goat is stubborn, resilient, and surprisingly strong. Furthermore, the male goat, the buck, was a symbol of intense virility and life force in the ancient world. The thunder is the fertilizer of the earth. The rain brings life. So the goats represent that raw, generative power. But there is a darker, more magical function to Tangrisnir and Tanjoster. They are not merely beasts of burden. They are a mobile feast. They represent the infinite abundance of the divine provided. And this is the crucial lesson, that the natural order is respected. This brings us to one of the most significant narratives in the prose Edda, a story found in the section known as the Gylfaginning. It is a story that defines Thor's relationship with humanity, and it explains why he travels with two mortal servants. The saga begins with Thor and Loki traveling together. It is evening, and the shadows are lengthening across the realm of Midgard. They are far from the golden comforts of Asgard. They are in the wild, on the edge of the known world. They come upon a humble farmhouse. It belongs to a peasant family. The father, the mother, a son named Thialfi, and a daughter named Roskva. Imagine the scene inside that farmhouse. The hearth is burning low. The family is poor. They have little to offer two towering strangers who knock on their door as the storm rages outside. They open the door, and there stands the red-bearded one, filling the frame, rain dripping from his cloak, with the smaller, sharp-eyed Loki peering from behind him. Thor does not demand their food. He knows they have none. Instead, he performs his sacred ritual. He unharnesses Tangrisnir and Tanjuster from the chariot. He draws his knife, not a weapon of war in this moment, but a tool of sustenance. Right there, outside the farmhouse, he slaughters his own goats. He skins them with practiced ease, laying the hides out carefully on the ground. He cuts the meat from the bones and places it into the family's cauldron. Soon, the smell of rich, gamey meat fills the small house. It is a feast such as this peasant family has never seen. Thor invites them to eat. "Eat your fill," he tells them. "But take heed. Throw the bones onto the skins I have spread. Do not break them. Do not crack them for the marrow. The bones must remain whole." This command is not arbitrary. It is the law of the ritual. The flesh is a gift, but the structure, the bone, contains the essence of life that must be preserved for the resurrection. The family eats. They gorge themselves on the divine meat. But Loki, the agent of chaos, is sitting next to the boy, Thialfi. Loki whispers to him. He nudges him. He points out the thigh bone of one of the goats. "The marrow," Loki suggests, "is the best part. It is sweet and rich. Why should you waste it? The god will never know." Thialfi is young. He is hungry. And he is influenced by the silver-tongued trickster. While Thor is distracted, perhaps laughing or drinking from his horn, Thialfi takes the thigh bone. He takes his knife and splits it open. He sucks out the marrow, that dense, life-giving substance. Then, terrified, he places the broken bone shards back onto the goat skin, trying to hide the damage among the other bones. The meal ends. The family sleeps, bellies full, unaware of the cosmic transgression that has occurred. The dawn breaks. The sky is gray and cold. Thor rises early. He walks out to the pile of skins and bones. He takes Mjölnir in his hand. He raises the hammer of creation. He speaks the hallowing words. In an instant, the pile of remains shudders. Flesh knits itself out of thin air. Fur sprouts. Blood rushes into veins. Tangrisnir and Tanjuster stand up, shaking the dew from their coats, alive and whole. Or so it seems. Thor watches them. He has a keen eye. He notices that one of the goats, the one whose bone was split, is limping. It drags its hind leg. It is lame. The atmosphere in the farmyard changes instantly. The benevolent guest vanishes. The thunder god emerges. Snorri Sturluson describes the terrifying transformation of Thor's face. His eyebrows sink down over his eyes, casting them into deep shadow. The knuckles of his hands turn white as he grips the shaft of Mjölnir so tightly that the iron gloves creak. His eyes, we are told, are terrifying to behold. He does not shout. He growls, a sound like a tectonic plate shifting. Who has broken the bone? The family is paralyzed with terror. They realize, too late, the magnitude of their mistake. They see the god's knuckles whitening. They see the hammer raised, ready to bring the roof of their house down upon their heads, ready to crush them into the mud of the farmyard. This is the danger of the divine. Thor is a protector, yes, but he is a force of nature. If you disrespect the storm destroys you. The father, the old peasant, falls to his knees. He offers everything he has. He offers his house, his land, his cattle, just to spare their lives. He is weeping, begging for mercy. And then, just as quickly as the storm rises, it breaks. Thor sees their genuine terror. He sees their poverty. The red cloud of rage lifts from his eyes. He lowers the hammer. But a debt has been incurred. A price must be paid. The balance of the universe has been tipped. A divine beast has been maimed, and it must be righted. I will not take your lives, Thor says, his voice still rumbling like distant thunder. But I will take your children. He points to Thialfi and Roskva. They shall come with me. They shall be my bondservants. They will travel with me, tend to the goats, and serve in the hall of Bilskirnir forever. This is the origin of Thor's two constant mortal companions. Thialfi becomes his swiftest runner, a young man of incredible speed who will play a pivotal role in later myths. Roskva becomes his servant, though she features less prominently in the tales. This story is crucial for understanding Thor. It establishes him as the god of the people, but it also establishes the hierarchy. He eats with them. He sleeps under their roof, but he owns them. He is the master. It also cements the symbolism of the goats. Tangrisnir and Tanjoster are not just animals. They are a renewable resource, a miracle of sustenance that Thor carries with him. They are the mobile larder of the wilderness. The lame goat, Tanjoster, eventually heals, or at least continues to pull the chariot despite the limp. A constant reminder of the fragility of the pact between gods and men. With his new servants in tow, Thor leaves the farmhouse. He leaves the chariot and the goats behind for a time, perhaps to let the leg heal, and continues his journey on foot toward the east, toward Jotunheim, toward the land of giants. This transition marks the beginning of the great expeditions. Thor is rarely content to sit in Asgard. His nature drives him outward, into the wild, into the unknown. He is the explorer, the one who pushes against the boundaries. And his destination now is the stronghold of the giants, a place of illusions and tests that will challenge not his strength, but his mind. But before we reach the halls of the Giant King Utgard-Loki, we must speak of another aspect of Thor's life. We must speak of his role as the great builder's adversary. For while Thor was away in the east, bashing trolls and hunting beasts, Asgard itself was left vulnerable. And it was during one of these absences that the gods made a terrible bargain. The fortification of Asgard is a story that highlights Thor's role as the ultimate enforcer. The gods, sitting on their high seats, are often tricked. Odin is cunning, but he can be outwitted by his own greed for wisdom or power. Freya is often the prize of these wagers. But Thor is the veto. Thor is the violence that voids the contract. The story goes that a stranger came to Asgard offering to build a wall so high and so strong that no frost giant or mountain giant could ever breach it. All he asked for in return was the sun, the moon, and the hand of the goddess Freyja in marriage. The gods, advised by Loki, agreed, but only if the builder could finish the work in one winter with no help from any man. They thought it impossible. They wanted the wall for free. But the builder had a stallion, a horse named Svadilfari, and this horse was stronger than any 100 men. It hauled stones the size of mountains. The wall rose higher and higher, faster and faster. Winter was ending. The wall was nearly complete. Panic set in among the gods. If the builder finished, they would lose the light of the world, the sun and moon, and the beauty of the world, Freyja. They turned to Loki. "This is your fault," they said. "Fix it." Loki, shapeshifter that he is, transformed himself into a mare. He lured the stallion Svadilfari away into the woods. Without his horse, the builder could not finish the work. The deadline passed. The builder, realizing he had been tricked, flew into a rage. His disguise fell away. He was not a man. He was a mountain giant. The gods looked at each other. They did not have their weapons. They did not have the strength to fight a giant of this magnitude within their own walls. They looked to the horizon. They called out. And from the east the lightning flashed. Thor had returned. He did not ask about the contract. He did not ask about the wager or the deadline. He saw a giant threatening the gods inside the perimeter of Asgard. That was the only permission he needed. The prose Edda says simply, "He paid the workmen his wages, but not with the sun and the moon. He raised Mjölnir. One blow. The skull of the giant was shattered into small crumbs. The builder was sent down to Niflheim, to the misty dark." This moment defines Thor's function. He is the eraser of mistakes. When the other gods tangle themselves in words and wagers, Thor cuts the knot with the hammer. He is the simplicity of violence in a complex world. He is the guarantee that no matter how foolish the rulers of Asgard may be, the walls will stand because he stands in front of them. Now, pause and listen again. The chariot is moving. Thialfi and Roskva are running beside the wheels, struggling to keep up with the gods' long strides. The goats are snarling, their hooves striking the cloud tops. They are heading deeper into the mysteries of the north. They are heading toward a confrontation that will test the very concept of reality. They are heading to meet a king who weaves magic out of shadow. A king who will make Thor doubt his own strength. They are heading to the court of Utgard-Loki. But to understand the humiliation and the glory that awaits them there, we must first understand the nature of the companions. We know Thialfi is fast. But how fast? Fast enough to race a thought? We know Thor is strong, but is he strong enough to wrestle old age? The myth of the journey to Utgard is not a story of battle. It is a story of perception. It is a psychological horror story wrapped in a contest of games. And it begins with a meeting in a deep forest, with a giant who is sleeping so loudly that his snoring shakes the ground like an earthquake. This giant is named Skrymir, and he is the first being Thor encounters who does not fear the hammer. Why? Because you cannot hit what is not truly there. As we prepare to follow them into the deep woods of Jotunheim, remember the sound of the broken bone. Remember the limp of Tanjoster. It is a reminder that even the gods can leave scars, and in the land of the giants, scars are weaknesses that can be exploited. The sky is darkening, the wind is picking up. The thunder is rolling away to the east. Let us follow it. Imagine the silence. It is not the peaceful silence of a winter morning, nor the hushed reverence of a temple. It is a terrifying void. It is the sound of a heart that has stopped beating. For the first time in the history of the cosmos, the realm of the gods is quiet. The rumbling has ceased. The static charge in the air has dissipated. Thor awakes. He is in his great hall, Mjölnir. He reaches out a hand, instinctively, towards the bedside table, towards the stone plinth where he lays his weapon while he sleeps. His fingers grasp at the air. He fumbles in the darkness. He sits up, his massive frame casting a long shadow in the dim light of the dying hearth. He sweeps his hands across the floor. Nothing. The hammer is gone. Mjölnir, the crusher, the protector of Asgard, the only thing keeping the frost giants at bay, has vanished. The poetic Edda, in the poem Þrymskvida, describes Thor's reaction not as fear, but as a primal physical response. His beard shakes, his hair bristles. He gropes around him like a man who has lost a limb. The anger that rises in him is not the hot flash of battle rage. It is a cold, desperate fury. Without the hammer, Asgard is defenseless. If the giants learn of this theft, they will storm the walls within the hour. He goes first to the one person who walks between the worlds of order and chaos. He goes to Loki. He speaks a secret that has never been spoken before. Hear now, Loki, what no one on earth or in heaven knows. The hammer is stolen. Loki, for once, does not mock. He understands the gravity of the situation. He offers to help, but to find the thief, they need wings. They go to the court of Freya, the goddess of beauty, love, and war magic. Freya possesses a cloak made of falcon feathers. When one wears it, they can fly with the speed and silence of a bird of prey. Thor asks to borrow it. Freya, recognizing the peril, agrees instantly. "I would give it to you, even if it were made of silver," she says. "I would lend it even if it were made of gold." Loki dons the feather cloak. With a sound like the rushing of wind, he shoots up into the sky, leaving the anxious Thor behind. He flies north and east, crossing the high walls of Asgard, soaring over the desolate expanse of Midgard, until he reaches the jagged frozen peaks of Jotunheim. There, sitting on a burial mound, a seat of authority and kingship, he finds Thrym. Thrym is the king of the Thurs, a clan of brutish, powerful giants. He is braiding golden collars for his dogs. He is trimming the manes of his horses. He looks up as Loki lands, arrogant and calm. "How are the Aesir?" Thrym asks. "How are the elves? Why have you come alone to Jotunheim?" Loki does not waste time. The Aesir are in trouble. The elves are in trouble. Have you hidden the hammer of the Thunderer? Thrym smiles. It is a smile of absolute leverage. "I have hidden the hammer," he admits. "I have buried it 8 leagues under the earth. No one shall ever retrieve it, unless—" And here lies the trap. The price. "Unless Freya is brought to me as my bride." This is the oldest desire of the giants. They crave the beauty, the light, and the fertility of the gods. They want to possess the sun, the moon, and the goddess of love. Thrym believes he has won. He holds the ultimate hostage. Loki flies back. The wind whistles through the feathers of the cloak. He returns to Asgard, where Thor is waiting in the courtyard. Thor demands news before Loki even touches the ground. "Tell me," he shouts. "Do not wait to land. News spoken sitting is often forgotten. News spoken lying down is often deceptive." Loki delivers the ransom demand, the hammer for Freya. The two gods go to Freya's hall. They tell her the news. "Dress yourself in bridal linen," Thor commands, perhaps a bit too bluntly. "We must drive to Jotunheim." Freya's reaction is catastrophic. The text says she snorted with such rage that the entire hall of the gods shook. Her famous necklace, the brisingamen, the most beautiful object ever forged, burst apart and fell from her neck. "Call me the most man-crazed of all women," she screams. "If I drive with you to Jotunheim." She refuses. Absolutely. She will not prostitute herself to a giant to fix Thor's carelessness. The gods are at a stalemate. They call a great council. All the Aesir and all the Vanir gather on their judgment seats. How can they get the hammer back without sacrificing Freya? It is Heimdall who speaks. Heimdall, the white god, the watcher who sees into the future. He makes a suggestion that is both brilliant and, for Thor, deeply humiliating. "Let us dress Thor in the bridal linen," Heimdall says. "Let us put the brisingamen necklace around his throat. Let keys jingle at his belt, and let women's skirts fall to his knees. Let us cover his head with a bridal veil." Silence falls over the council. They look at Thor, the burliest, most masculine, red-bearded warrior of them all. The idea of him in a dress is absurd. Thor objects immediately. "The Aesir will call me effeminate," he growls. "They will question my manhood if I let you dress me in bridal gear." But Loki, the shapeshifter, the gender bender, the one comfortable in all skins, cuts him off. "Be silent, Thor," Loki warns. "Do not speak such nonsense. The giants will soon be dwelling in Asgard if you do not retrieve your hammer." Thor realizes he has no choice. It is a sacrifice of dignity for the sake of survival. And so the transformation begins. It is a scene of ritual comedy, but also of intense seriousness. The goddesses bring the finest linen. They drape it over Thor's massive shoulders, trying to hide the bulging muscles. They fasten the great necklace, brisingamen, around his thick neck. They hang a bunch of housekeeping keys at his belt, the symbol of a married woman, the mistress of a household. They place jeweled rings on his fingers, and finally, they cover his fierce face, his burning eyes and red beard with a thick veil. Loki smiles. "I will go with you," he says. "I will be your handmaiden." The goats are brought in. Tangrisnir and Tanjoster are harnessed. The chariot is hitched. The gods drive out of Asgard. The mountains burst into flame. The earth splits with fire. They are driving to Jotunheim, and they are bringing the storm with them. When they arrive at Thrym's hall, the Giant King is ecstatic. He sees the chariot approaching. He sees the two figures, one tall and broad, one smaller and slender. He assumes he has won. "Stand up, giants," he shouts. "Put straw on the benches. They are bringing me Freya, the daughter of Njord, from Noatun." He boasts of his wealth, his golden horned cows, his treasures, his jewels. "I had everything," he says, "except Freya." The feast is prepared. It is evening. The giants and the bride sit down to eat, And this is where the disguise almost fails. Thor is a god of immense appetite. He has traveled far. He is stressed. And he is Thor. He cannot eat like a bird. The text details his consumption with hilarious precision. Thrym watches in horror as his delicate bride consumes an entire ox. Then he eats 8 salmon. Then he eats all the dainties and sweetmeats that were set aside for the women. And finally, to wash it all down, he drinks 3 huge casks of mead. Thrym is stunned. He leans over to Loki, the handmaiden, and whispers, "Have you ever seen a bride bite so sharply? I have never seen a bride bite so broadly, nor a maiden drink so much mead." Loki, quick-witted as always, has the answer ready. "Freya has not eaten for 8 nights, he says smoothly. She was so eager to come to Jotunheim that she could not touch food. Thrym accepts this. It flatters his ego. He leans in to kiss his bride. He lifts the corner of the veil. He jumps back the entire length of the hall. He stumbles, terrified. "Why are Freya's eyes so terrifying?" he stammers. "It looks as if fire is burning from them." Thor's eyes, the eyes of the storm, cannot be hidden. They are glowing with repressed rage. Loki intervenes again. "Freya has not slept for 8 nights, he lies. "She was so eager to come to Jotunheim that she could not close her eyes." Thrym is reassured. The sister of the giant enters the hall. She is a greedy, wretched creature. She approaches the bride and dares to ask for a gift. "Give me the red rings from your arms," she demands, "if you want my love and friendship." But the time for talk is ending. The ritual must be concluded. Thrym wants to hallow the marriage. He wants to seal the union. "Bring in the hammer," Thrym commands, "to hallow the bride. Lay Mjölnir on the maiden's knees. Unite us together by the hand of Var." Var is the goddess of oaths. Thrym intends to bless the wedding with the very weapon he stole. It is the ultimate irony. The servants bring it in, the short handle, the heavy iron head. They walk through the hall and place it on the lap of the bride. The moment Thor feels the cold iron against his legs, his heart laughs in his breast. The humiliation, the dress, the veil, it all vanishes. He is whole again. He stands up. The veil is ripped aside. The red beard is revealed. He does not speak. He strikes. The first blow kills Thrym, crushing the skull of the Giant King who dared to demand a goddess. The second blow kills the wretched sister who asked for bridal gifts. Instead of gold rings, she receives a hammer blow. Then Thor turns on the rest of the hall. It is not a battle. It is a massacre. The thunder rolls inside the cavernous room. Lightning arcs from the weapon. Every giant present is slain. The hall of Thrym becomes a tomb. Thor strips off the bridal linen. He reclaims his chariot. And with Loki beside him, he drives back to Asgard, the hammer resting comfortably in his iron grip. The universe is safe once more. The theft has been avenged. But the image remains. The thunder god in a wedding dress, willing to become the other to protect the self. It is a story that Aesir would tell around their hearth fires for centuries, laughing at the image, but respecting the dedication. This adventure, however, was a retrieval. It was a reaction to a loss. The next great saga we must explore is a journey of exploration. It is the tale that was teased earlier. The journey that leads Thor and his companions deep into the illusionary forests of the east. Having recovered his weapon, Thor feels invincible. But invincibility is a dangerous illusion. And he is about to meet a master who will show him that raw strength is not the only power in the cosmos. Prepare yourself. The forest is deep, the shadows are long, and the knot on the provision bag is tied tighter than any mortal hand could manage. We are going to meet Utgard-Loki. The journey begins, as all great trials do, with the crossing of a threshold. Leaving behind the familiar fortified golden plains of Asgard, Thor turns his chariot east. But this time, he does not ride all the way to his destination. The prose Edda tells us that upon reaching the vast, deep ocean that separates the world of gods from the world of giants, Thor leaves his goats behind. Perhaps the terrain is too treacherous even for Tanjoster and Tangrisnir. Perhaps he wishes to move with the quiet determination of a hunter. He walks. Beside him walks Loki, the shadow to his light. And behind them, carrying the heavy provision bags, trail the two mortal servants, Thialfi and Roskva. They cross the great sea, wading through the gray surf until they reach the far shore. This is the edge of Jotunheim. The air here is different. It does not smell of ozone and rain. It smells of pine resin, ancient moss, and something older, something stagnant. They enter a forest. This is not a forest of saplings and sunbeams. It is a primeval wood. The trees are so tall that their tops are lost in the mist. The undergrowth is thick and tangled, grabbing at their ankles like skeletal hands. There are no paths here. This is the wild before it was tamed by names or maps. They walk all day. Thialfi, the swiftest of humans, leads the way, his eyes scanning for the game, but the forest is unnaturally silent. There are no deer, there are no birds, just the endless creaking of wood and the soft thud of their boots on the needle-covered floor. As twilight begins to bleed through the canopy, turning the gray mist into a suffocating purple gloom, they realize they need shelter. The temperature is dropping. The cold of Jotunheim is a living thing. It seeks to enter the bone. They stumble upon a clearing. In the dim light, they see a structure. It is strange, a massive hall, seemingly abandoned. It has no door, just a gaping entrance that spans the entire width of the building. It looks like a cave hewn into a perfect arch. They do not question their luck. They are tired. They are hungry. They walk into the vast open room and settle down on the hard floor to sleep. But rest does not come. In the dead of night, the ground lurches. It is not a subtle tremor. The entire hall shakes violently, as if the earth itself is convulsing. Dust falls from the ceiling. Thor is on his feet instantly, Mjölnir in his hand. He herds his companions into a smaller side chamber, a little annex off the main hall, seeking safety. He stands in the doorway, blocking the entrance with his massive body, listening. The earthquake comes again, and again. A rhythmic, thundering vibration that rattles the teeth in their skulls. Thor does not sleep. He stands guard, eyes piercing the darkness, waiting for the enemy that is shaking the world. Dawn arrives slowly, fighting its way through the dense canopy. With the light, the shaking stops. Thor steps out of the hall and into the forest. And there, lying on the forest floor, he sees the source of the earthquake. It is a man, or rather, a giant of such colossal proportions that Thor, who towers over mortal men, looks like a child beside him. The giant is sleeping, and he is snoring. The earthquake was the intake of his breath. The rumbling was the rattle of his lungs. Thor, for the first time, feels a flicker of something that is not quite fear, but definitely respect. He tightens his belt, Mjölnir, feeling the surge of divine strength. He grips the hammer. He is ready to strike. Just then, the giant opens his eyes. He stands up. He rises and rises and rises until his head brushes the lower branches of the cloud-piercing trees. Snorri Sturluson writes a rare detail here. And it is said that Thor was afraid to strike him with the hammer then. Instead, he asks the giant his name. "My name is Skrymir," the giant booms. His voice is like a rockfall. "I am the big fellow, and I have no need to ask your name. I know you are Asa Thor." Skrymir looks around, scratching his massive head. "But tell me," he asks, pointing to the structure the travelers had slept in, "what have you done with my glove?" He reaches down and picks up the hall. It was not a building. It was the giant's glove. The main room was the space for the hand. The side chamber, where they had cowered in fear, was the space for the thumb. Thor stares. He has slept in a glove. The scale of this being is beyond anything he has encountered. Skrymir smiles, a smile that does not quite reach his eyes, and suggests they travel together. "Union is strength," he says. He proposes they combine their provisions. Thor agrees. Skrymir takes Thor's provision bag, ties it together with his own into one massive bundle, and throws it over his shoulder. They walk all day. Skrymir takes strides that cover miles. Thialfi has to run at full sprint just to keep pace. Thor marches grimly, his pride bruised, but his resolve unbroken. Evening comes. They find a place to camp under a great oak tree. Skrymir drops the provision bag. "I am going to sleep," he yawns. "You take the bag and prepare supper." He lies down, and within seconds, the snoring begins again. The forest shakes. Thor is hungry. Loki is hungry. The servants are starving. Thor walks to the bag. He grabs the knot, the straps of leather Skrymir used to tie it shut. He pulls. It does not move. He pulls harder, putting his back into it, his biceps bulging like iron cables. The knot does not loosen. He puts a foot against the bag and hauls with both hands, growling with effort. It is as if the leather has been fused into a single piece of iron. There is no give, not a millimeter. The god of strength, the strongest being in the cosmos, cannot untie a knot. Hunger turns to rage. Thor looks at the sleeping giant. The snoring is mocking him. The knot is mocking him. He realizes, with a flash of red anger, that this is not hospitality. This is a game. He grabs Mjölnir. He walks over to Skrymir's head. He raises the hammer with both hands, channeling every ounce of frustration and hunger into the blow. He brings it down on the giant's skull. Crack. It is a sound that should have split a mountain. Skrymir stirs. He opens one sleepy eye. He brushes his cheek. "Did a leaf fall on my head?" he mumbles. "Are you awake, Thor? Have you eaten?" Thor steps back, stunned. We have eaten," he lies. "We are going to sleep." He retreats to another oak tree, but he cannot sleep. The snoring is louder now. It is unbearable. It is the sound of his own impotence. Midnight comes. Thor rises again. He is trembling with fury. He tightens his belt one notch, 2 notches. The power flows through him until his skin feels tight. He walks to Skrymir. He aims for the crown of the head. He swings Mjölnir with such violence that the hammer sinks deep into the giant's skull. Skrymir wakes up. He looks annoyed. "What is it now?" he grumbles. "Did an acorn fall on my head?" "Thor, what are you doing standing there?" I just woke up," Thor stammers, retreating into the shadows. It is only midnight. He sits in the dark, watching the giant. He resolves that the next blow will be the last. He will not hold back. He will summon the storm that cracks the world. Dawn approaches. The snoring is at its peak. Thor walks over. He plants his feet. He swings. The hammer strikes the giant's temple. It sinks in up to the handle. Skrymir sits up. He rubs his temple. "There must be birds nesting in this tree," he says, looking up into the branches. "I think some moss or a twig fell on me." He looks at Thor, who is standing there, chest heaving, hammer hanging limp. "Well," Skrymir says cheerfully, "time to go. You are heading to the fortress of Utgard. I am heading north. But let me give you some advice, little Thor. When you get to the court of Utgard-Loki, do not be arrogant. The men there are bigger than me. They will not tolerate bragging from little people like you. Turn back, if you are wise. But if you must go, go east." Skrymir takes his bag, the food still locked inside, and walks away into the forest. He does not look back. Thor and his companions stand alone. They are starving. They are exhausted. They have been humiliated. But they are Norse gods. They do not turn back. They walk east until midday. The forest begins to thin. And there, rising out of a vast plain of ice and rock, they see it. It is a fortress, but it is not like the walls of Asgard. It is a structure of impossible geometry. The walls are so high that they have to tilt their heads back until their necks ache just to see the battlements. It is built of blocks of black ice and gray stone, seamless and terrifying. They approach the gate. It is a gate of wrought iron bar, locked tight. Thor walks up to it. He pushes, he pulls, he strikes it. It does not budge. But the bars are so widely spaced, because they are built for giants, that the gods realize they can simply squeeze between them. Like rats entering a pantry, the greatest gods of the Aesir slip sideways through the gate of the enemy. They are inside. The courtyard is vast. They see a hall with the doors open. They walk in. There, sitting on a high throne, surrounded by benches filled with giants of immense size, sits the king, Utgard-Loki. He is not to be confused with Loki the trickster. This is the king of the Outyards, the king of illusion. He looks down at the tiny figures entering his hall. He does not offer them mead. He does not offer them a seat. He smiles a thin, cold smile. It is a long journey, Utgard-Loki says, his voice echoing like wind in a canyon. And news travels slowly. But is this toddler the famous Aesir Thor? He leans forward, his eyes gleaming with malicious amusement. You look smaller than I imagined, Thor. But perhaps there is more to you than meets the eye. In this hall, no one is allowed to stay unless they excel at some skill or craft. We are a court of champions. So tell me, what can you do? The challenge is thrown. The trap is set. They are deep in enemy territory, starving and stripped of their dignity. They have only one way to survive. They must win. Loki, standing behind Thor, speaks up first. He is hungry. He sees the tables laden with meat. He wants to prove himself and perhaps fill his belly. I have a skill, Loki says, his eyes darting to a trough full of meat at the end of the bench. I can eat faster than anyone. Utgard-Loki nods. That is a skill indeed, if you can prove it. He calls to a man sitting at the end of the bench. Loki, come forward. Let us see who can eat the fastest. A wooden trough, filled with mountains of meat and bones, is placed on the floor. Loki stands at one end. Loki stands at the other. The signal is given. This is not just a contest. It is the beginning of the dismantling of the gods' perception of reality. They are about to engage in competitions that are rigged in the most profound way possible. They are fighting against concepts, not creatures, but they do not know it yet. Thor watches, his hand tightening on Mjölnir. He is ready for his turn. He is ready to drink. He is ready to lift. He is ready to wrestle. He does not know that he is about to wrestle the inevitability of old age itself. But first, let us watch the Eater of Worlds begin his feast. The massive iron-bound doors of the fortress have closed behind them. The air inside the great hall of Utgard-Loki is stagnant, heavy with the scent of ancient wood smoke, unwashed bodies, and roasting meat. It is a cavernous space, so large that the ceiling is lost in shadows, where bats the size of eagles might roost unseen. Torches flicker along the walls, casting long, dancing shapes that seem to mock the guests. Thor stands in the center of the hall, his small band of companions huddled near him. They feel the weight of 1,000 eyes. Giants of every shape and size line the benches, mountain giants with skin like granite, frost giants breathing visible mist, and darker, stranger things that dwell in the deep valleys of Jotunheim. They are silent now, waiting. The challenge has been issued. The court of Utgard-Loki is not a place of war, but a place of contest. And in this realm, prowess is the only currency that matters. The king, Utgard-Loki, leans forward on his high seat. His face is unreadable, a mask of calm malice. He has challenged the gods to prove they are more than just myths. We begin with the hunger, the king announces, his voice rolling through the hall like stones in a riverbed. Loki of Asgard claims he can eat faster than any being. Let us test this boast. A trough is brought forward. It is not a simple dish. It is a hollowed-out log, long enough to be a canoe, piled high with steaming meat. Roasted oxen, charred boars, mounds of flesh dripping with fat. Loki steps up to one end. He is slight, sharp-featured, his eyes darting with nervous energy. He is the trickster, the fire-bringer, and his appetite is legendary. At the other end sits his opponent, a quiet, unassuming figure named Loki. At the king's signal, the silence shatters. Loki attacks the food. He does not eat like a man. He eats like a predator. His hands are a blur. He tears meat from bone, swallowing huge chunks without chewing, his throat distending like a snake's. He moves with a frantic, terrifying speed, a whirlwind of consumption. Bones fly over his shoulder, stripped clean of every scrap of gristle. He is winning. He must be winning. He reaches the middle of the trough, his chest heaving, grease staining his chin, triumphant. But there, at the midpoint, he stops. Loki is there to meet him. Loki stares, his triumph turning to confusion. He looks back at his own path. A pile of clean white bones lies in the trough. Then he looks at Loki's path. It is empty. Loki has not just eaten the meat. He has eaten the bones. He has eaten the gristle. He has eaten the wooden trough itself. Where Loki has passed, nothing remains. Not a splinter. It is a consumption so absolute, it defies nature. A valiant effort, Utgard-Loki calls out, his voice tinged with amusement. Loki has eaten all the meat, but Loki has eaten the trough. It seems the victory goes to my man. Loki steps back, wiping his mouth, his eyes narrowing. He cannot understand it. How can a stomach hold wood and bone? He retreats to Thor's side, defeated. But the mystery gnaws at him more than the hunger. The king turns his gaze to the mortal boy, Thialfi. And the boy, "You say you are swift, swifter than any man in Midgard. Will you run for us?" Thialfi nods. He is young, lean, his muscles coiled like springs. He has outrun deer. He has outrun the wind on the plains. "I will race," he says, his voice trembling slightly. They move to a flat track of beaten earth outside the hall, lit by the eerie glow of the moon. The opponent is brought forward. A small, slender boy named Hugi. He looks fragile, insubstantial. 3 races, Utgard-Loki commands. The first race begins. Thialfi launches himself forward. He runs with perfect form, his feet striking the ground with light, rhythmic thuds. The wind tears at his hair. He feels fast. He feels unstoppable. But as he nears the end of the track, he sees a blur ahead of him. Hugi has already reached the post, turned around, and is greeting him as he arrives. Thialfi pants, shocked. "I can do better," he gasps. The second race. Thialfi digs deep. He summons the energy of survival. He runs until his vision blurs, until his lungs burn like fire. He is flying. But when he crosses the line, Hugi is standing there, leaning against the post, waiting. "You are fast," the king admits, "but not fast enough." The third race. Thialfi gives everything. He pours his very soul into his legs. He runs so fast that the ground seems to blur beneath him. But Hugi does not just run. He seems to exist at the finish line before he even leaves the start. He beats Thialfi not by a second, but by a lifetime. Thialfi collapses, gasping, his legs trembling. He has been beaten by a speed that makes him feel like he is standing still. Now, the hall turns to the main event. The atmosphere shifts. The giants stop their murmuring. The red-bearded one steps forward. Thor is seething. He has seen his brother-in-arms out-eaten and his servant outrun. He feels the mockery radiating from the benches. He tightens his belt, Mjölnir. The leather creaks. "I am thirsty," Thor growls. "I will drink. Bring me your biggest cup." Utgard-Loki smiles. "We have a horn here. It is used by our warriors. A strong man drains it in one draught. A weaker man takes two. But no one is so wretched that they cannot finish it in three." The cupbearer brings the horn. It is old, made of a material Thor does not recognize. It is long, impossibly long, curving away into the shadows. Thor takes it. It is cold to the touch. It smells faintly of salt. Thor sets his feet. He raises the horn. He knows his own capacity. He has drained oceans of mead in the halls of Asgard. He takes a breath and tilts his head back. He drinks. The liquid is cold, icy, heavy. It pours down his throat like a waterfall. He swallows and swallows, a rhythmic, powerful chugging that echoes in the silence of the hall. He drinks until his chest aches, until his breath is gone, until he feels he will burst. He lowers the horn, gasping, wiping foam from his beard. He looks inside, expecting to see the bottom. The level has barely dropped. It is as if he took a single sip from a lake. "A poor showing," Utgard-Loki taunts. "I expected more from the slayer of giants." Thor's face turns purple with rage. He raises the horn again. This time he does not stop. He drinks with the desperation of a drowning man. He drinks until his vision goes black at the edges. The sound of his swallowing is like the glug of a sinking ship. He drinks for what feels like an hour. He tears the horn from his lips, panting heavily. He looks. The liquid has gone down, yes. He can carry the horn without spilling now, but it is still nearly full. "You have left much for the third round," the king says softly. "Perhaps you are not the god we thought you were." Thor roars. It is a sound of pure frustration. He grabs the horn with both iron-gloved hands. He attacks the drink. He gulps it down with a ferocity that terrifies the onlookers. He drinks until his very stomach feels cold as the grave. But it is no use. The horn is bottomless. He throws it aside, the clatter echoing on the stone floor. He is defeated by a cup. "It is clear," Utgard-Loki says, "that your power is not so great here. Perhaps a smaller task. Our children play a game. They lift my gray cat from the floor. It is a simple thing. A cat walks into the center of the hall. It is gray, large, but just a cat. It sits there, licking its paw, ignoring the god." Thor strides towards it. He is done with games. He will throw this beast through the roof. He puts his hands under its belly. He heaves. The cat does not move. Thor frowns. He widens his stance. He bends his knees. He grabs the cat's fur, which feels strange, coarse, and heavy as iron wool, and pulls upward with all his might. His muscles stand out like cords of steel. The floor stones beneath his boots begin to crack. He grunts, a guttural sound of supreme effort. The cat simply arches its back. Thor lifts higher. He lifts until his arms are trembling, until his spine feels as if it will snap. He lifts with the strength that crushed mountains. Slowly, agonizingly, One of the cat's paws lifts an inch off the ground. That is all. Thor drops the cat. He staggers back exhausted, sweat pouring into his eyes. He cannot lift a house cat. "Little Thor," the king mocks. "The cat is big, and you are small." "Small," Thor screams. The rage is a physical thing now, heating the air in the hall. "I am Thor Odinson. I will wrestle anyone. Send me your champion. Send me your strongest warrior." "There is no one here who would wrestle a child," Utgard-Loki says dismissively. "But if you insist, call Ellie. Call my old nurse." An old woman enters. She is ancient. Her skin hangs in folds. Her hair is wispy and white. She walks with a stick. "Wrestle her," the king says. Thor stares. This is the ultimate insult, but he is blinded by anger. He grabs the old woman, intending to gently set her down. It is like grabbing a mountain root. She is immovable. She looks at him with watery eyes, and then she moves. Her grip is surprisingly strong, not sharp, but inexorable. She begins to push. Thor pushes back. He strains. He fights. He uses every wrestling trip and throw he knows, but she absorbs his strength and keeps coming. She is heavy, endlessly heavy. She presses him down. Thor's boots slide on the floor. He grunts, fighting to stay upright. But she is pushing him down, down, down. His knee hits the stone. "Enough!" cries Utgard-Loki. Thor is kneeling. He is breathing hard, his head bowed. He has been eaten under the table, outrun by a boy, defeated by a cup, humbled by a cat, and brought to his knees by a grandmother. The hall is silent. The mockery is gone. There is only a heavy, strange stillness. "Night is deep," the king says. "We have seen enough. Show them to their beds." Thor sleeps that night in a haze of shame. He lies in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering if his entire life, his strength, his legend, was a lie. He feels weak. For the first time in his immortal existence, the god of thunder feels truly powerless. The night passes slowly, filled with the restless dreams of defeated gods. But the sun, indifferent to the shame of the Aesir, rises over Jotunheim. It is a stark, cold light that illuminates the vast frozen plains surrounding the fortress. Thor and his companions gather their gear in silence. They do not speak to one another. The humiliation hangs over them like a shroud. Thialfi rubs his legs, which still ache from the impossible race. Loki is sullen, picking at his teeth. Thor is grim, his face set in a mask of stone. He grips the handle of Mjölnir, not with pride, but with the desperation of a man holding onto his last shred of identity. They walk into the great hall to take their leave. They expect jeers. They expect the giants to line the path and laugh, to throw food, to mock the little gods. But the hall is quiet. The tables are set with a lavish breakfast. Utgard-Loki is waiting for them. The king's demeanor has shifted completely. The cold arrogance of the previous night is gone. In its place is a strange courtesy, almost a wariness. He greets them politely. He insists they eat. He asks how they slept. Thor eats because he must, but the food tastes like ash. He barely responds to the king's questions. He just wants to leave this cursed place. He wants to return to Asgard, to hide in his hall, to forget that this ever happened. When the meal is done, Utgard-Loki offers to escort them out of the fortress. They walk together through the massive gates, out onto the grassy plains that stretch toward the forest. The air is crisp. The fortress looms behind them, black and terrible. At the edge of the illusionary boundary, where the influence of the castle begins to fade, Utgard-Loki stops. He turns to face Thor. The giant is immense, blocking the sun, casting a long shadow over the god. "Now," the giant says, his voice losing its mocking edge and taking on a tone of deep, resonant seriousness. "We are parting ways. Tell me the truth, Thor. How do you think your journey has gone? Do you feel you have met a man mightier than yourself?" Thor looks up. His eyes are red-rimmed and heavy. "I cannot deny it," he says, his voice rough with honesty. "I have brought great shame upon myself. I have failed in every test. And what hurts me most is not the failure, but the thought that you and all your people will speak of me as a person of little worth. You will call me weak." Utgard-Loki sighs. He looks around to ensure they are alone. He leans down, bringing his massive face closer to Thor's. "Now that you are outside my walls," the king whispers, "I will tell you the truth. And the truth is this. If I had known how strong you really were, you would never have set foot inside my fortress. And by my oath, you never will again." Thor frowns, confused. "What are you saying?" "I am saying," Utgard-Loki continues, "that you were not defeated. You were deceived. It was all magic, sight, deception, illusion." The king straightens up and points a massive finger back toward the way they came. "Start with the forest. The giant Skrimir? That was me. I used wire made of troll iron to tie the provision bag. It was not a knot. It was a lock that no strength could break. And when you struck me, do you remember the 3 blows?" Thor nods slowly. "I placed a mountain between my head and your hammer. You could not see it, but it was there. Look over there." He points to a mountain range in the distance. "Do you see that saddle-backed mountain? Do you see the 3 square valleys cut deep into the rock? Those are the marks of Mjölnir. The first blow would have killed me. The second would have pulverized my bones. The third would have shattered the bedrock of the world. You carved valleys into stone with your anger." Thor listens, his breath catching in his throat. "And the contests," Utgard-Loki says, shaking his head in disbelief. "First, your brother Loki. He was very hungry. He ate fast. But his opponent was Logi. And Logi is not a giant. Logi is wildfire. Fire consumes meat and bone and wood. Loki raced against the element of fire itself, and he kept pace until the very end." Loki's head snaps up. A slow grin begins to form on his scarred lips. "And the boy," the king gestures to Thialfi. "You ran against Hugi. Hugi is my thought. There is no man, no beast, no god who can outrun a thought. A thought can be at the end of the world before a foot leaves the ground. Yet you forced my mind to work to beat you." Then Utgard-Loki turns his full attention to Thor. His eyes are filled with fear. But you, Thor, what you did was terrifying. It was impossible. The horn, the king says. You could not see the other end of it. It did not end in the hall. It went out the window across the land and dipped into the ocean. When you drank, you were not drinking mead. You were drinking the sea. Thor looks at his hands, the hands that held the ocean. When you reach the shore, Utgard-Loki says, look at the water. You will see that the level has dropped. You created the tides. You drank the ebb tide. The ocean shrank in fear of your thirst. And the cat, the king continues, his voice trembling slightly. That was no cat. That was Jormungandr, the Midgard Serpent, the beast that encircles the entire world. When you reached under its belly and lifted, the gods watching from the shadows stopped breathing. We were terrified. You lifted the earth encircler. You arched its back so high that its head and tail barely touched the seabed. When you lifted that one paw, you shifted the weight of the world. Thor stands frozen. The cat was the snake, his ancient enemy. He had held it in his hands. And finally, the king says softly, the old woman, Ellie. You felt shame to wrestle her, but Ellie is old age. She is time itself. There is no one born, no man, no giant, no god, who does not fall when old age grabs them. She crumbles mountains. She dries up seas. She ends all things. And yet you stood. You fought time, and you only fell to one knee. You wrestled eternity to a standstill. Utgard-Loki steps back, putting distance between himself and the thunder god. So you see, Thor, we did not mock you. We feared you. Your strength is too great. It threatens the fabric of our magic. Go now. Leave Jotunheim. If you come back, I will hide my castle again. I will weave illusions so deep you will never find us. But know this, you are the mightiest thing that has ever walked this earth. The shame evaporates from Thor's heart instantly. It is replaced by a cold, white-hot fury. He has been tricked. He has been manipulated. He has been made to feel weak when he was rewriting the laws of physics. He does not speak. He does not say goodbye. He reaches for Mjölnir. His fingers close around the iron grip. He draws the hammer back. He intends to strike Utgard-Loki down where he stands. He intends to smash the fortress into dust. He intends to break the illusions forever. He swings. Whoosh! There is no impact. There is no crunch of bone. Thor stumbles forward with the momentum of the blow. He looks up. Utgard-Loki is gone. He looks at the fortress. It is gone. There is no black ice wall. There is no great hall. There is only a wide, empty, grassy plain, stretching out to the horizon, whistling in the wind. The illusion has dissolved into nothingness. Thor stands alone in the wilderness. He lowers the hammer. He breathes in the cold air of Jotunheim. He looks at his hands. He feels the thrum of power in his blood. He is not weak. He is the tide drinker. He is the time wrestler. He is the world lifter. But a seed has been planted in his mind. The king mentioned the serpent, the cat that was the snake. Thor remembers the feeling of the fur, the scales under his fingers. He remembers the weight. He looks toward the sea. He knows the serpent is out there. And now he knows he can lift it. He turns to his companions. "We go," he says simply. He does not go home. He sends the chariot and the servants back. He walks alone toward the coast. He has unfinished business. He is not satisfied with lifting the serpent in a game. He wants to meet it in the deep water. He wants to feel the true weight of his enemy on the end of a line. This desire burns in him. It leads us directly to the shores of the vast northern ocean, to the hall of another giant, a fisherman named Hymir. It leads us to the most violent confrontation in the poetic Edda. The games are over. The fishing trip is about to begin. The sea is not like the land. The land can be walked upon, measured, and owned. But the sea is deep, dark, and indifferent. To the Norse mind, the ocean was the boundary of the known world, the watery, chaotic ring that separated the home of men from the void. And deep within that black water, encircling the roots of the continents, lay the greatest enemy of the gods. Thor stands on the shoreline. The wind whips his red beard against his face. He is looking out at the gray, heaving waves of the vast northern ocean. The humiliation of Utgard is still fresh in his mind. He remembers the weight of the cat he tried to lift. He remembers the trembling of the earth. He knows now that his enemy was under his hands, and he let it go. He is not seeking war today. He is seeking a confrontation. But to catch a monster that encircles the world, one needs a boat. And not just any boat. A vessel sturdy enough to withstand the thrashing of a god and a dragon. The poetic Edda, in the poem Himiskvida, tells us that Thor does not go alone. He travels with the god Tyr, the one-handed god of justice. In this specific and strange version of the myth, they are heading to the hall of the giant Hymir. Why? Because the gods need a cauldron massive enough to brew ale for all the Aesir, and only Hymir, the stepfather of Tyr, possesses such a vessel. They arrive at Hymir's hall, located near the edge of the sea. The giant is a harsh, craggy figure, with a beard like frosted wire. He is not happy to see guests. He is especially not happy to see the Thunderer, whose reputation as a giant slayer precedes him. But the laws of hospitality bind him. He must offer them food. Dinner is served. 3 whole oxen are roasted. Thor, still famished from his journey and burning with restless energy, eats 2 of the oxen by himself. Hymir watches in horror. He realizes that if this guest stays another night, his entire larder will be empty. "If you want to eat tomorrow," Hymir grumbles, "we will have to go fishing. You will have to catch your own dinner." This is exactly what Thor wanted. The next morning, the sky is the color of bruised iron. Hymir prepares his boat. It is a solid craft, built for deep-sea whaling. He tells Thor to find bait. "Go to the pasture," Hymir sneers, "and see if you can find some worms or scraps." Thor does not look for worms. He walks to the giant's herd of prize oxen. He spots the largest, blackest bull in the field. Its name is Himinriotur, which means heaven bellow. It is a magnificent beast. Thor walks up to it. He does not use a knife. He grips the bull's massive horns. With a single, sickening wrench of divine strength, he tears the bull's head from its shoulders. He walks back to the boat, blood dripping from the severed head, and tosses it into the bottom of the skiff. Hymir stares, pale and silent. He realizes he is in the boat with a maniac. They row out. Thor takes the oars. Hymir expects him to row like a man, but Thor rows like a machine. Each stroke propels the boat miles from the shore. The foam flies from the bow. Soon, they reach the fishing banks where Hymir usually catches flatfish. "Stop here," the giant says nervously. "This is good water." "No," Thor says. He does not stop rowing. They go further. The water turns from green to blue to black. They reach the place where whales surface to breathe. "Stop here," Hymir shouts. "It is dangerous to go further. The serpent lies beyond this point." "No," Thor says, and he rows on. They are now in the desolation, the open ocean where no ship goes. The waves are like mountains. The silence is absolute, broken only by the creak of the oars and the slap of water. Thor finally ships the oars. He takes a fishing line. It is not ordinary rope. It is a reinforced cable, and the hook is a massive anchor-like iron barb. He impales the head of the ox, Himinriotur, onto the hook. He stands up in the rocking boat and casts it overboard. The bait sinks. Down, down, past the whales, past the kraken, down to the mud of the abyss. And there, something wakes up. Jormungandr, the Midgard Serpent, smells the blood. It sees the offering. It opens a mouth that is large enough to swallow a longship. It takes the bait. The hook catches in the roof of its mouth. The reaction is instantaneous. The line snaps tight. It hums like a plucked harp string. The force of the bite yanks Thor's hands down to the gunwale. This is the moment, the contact. Thor does not let go. He reacts with the Asmegen, the god strength. He pulls back. The boat, sturdy as it is, cannot handle the opposing forces of the god and the serpent. The planks groan. Thor plants his feet. He pushes down so hard that the wood of the boat shatters. His feet go right through the hull, crashing down onto the seabed miles below. He is now standing on the bottom of the ocean, the black water swirling around his waist, the broken boat resting like a collar around his hips. He pulls. The ocean boils. The surface explodes. And slowly, heavily, the head of the serpent rises from the water. It is a nightmare made flesh. It is dripping with slime and poison. Its eyes are dead and cold, yet burning with ancient malice. It breathes, and a cloud of venom hangs in the air. Thor looks at the serpent. The serpent looks at Thor. This is one of the most famous images in Norse mythology, the stare-down. It is not just a monster and a hero. It is order looking at chaos. It is the storm looking at the void. Thor's eyes blaze with divine light. The serpent blows poison onto his beard, sizzling against the red hair. Thor reaches for his hammer. He releases the line with one hand, gripping Mjölnir with the other. He is about to strike. He is about to end the threat of Ragnarök before it even begins. One blow to that ugly head, and the world is saved. But Hymir is there. The giant is huddled in the stern of the broken boat, his face white with terror. He sees the serpent. He sees the end of the world rising above him. He panics. Just as Thor raises the hammer, just as the lightning begins to arc across the sky, Hymir draws his bait knife. With a trembling hand, he slashes the fishing line. Snap! The tension breaks. The serpent falls back into the water with a splash that sends a tsunami across the ocean. It sinks instantly, returning to the deep, safe from the hammer. Thor screams. It is a sound of pure, frustrated rage. He turns to Hymir. The giant is cowering, holding the knife. In some versions of the tale, Thor simply throws the giant overboard. In others, he strikes him with a single blow, sending him into the abyss after the serpent. But the result is the same. The catch is lost. The enemy has escaped. Thor, soaking wet, furious and alone, wades back to the shore. The ocean water crashes against his chest, but he does not swim. He walks through it, an unstoppable force returning to land. He has failed to kill the serpent, but he has looked it in the eye, and the serpent has looked at him. They now know each other. They know that the next time they meet, there will be no boat, no fishing line, and no giant to cut the cord. There will only be the final battle. But Thor's life is not just one of aquatic monsters. He is also a duelist. And upon his return to Asgard, he finds that another giant has come to threaten the peace of the gods. This time, the threat is not in the ocean, but in the great hall of Valhalla itself. This brings us to the duel with Hrungnir, a story that explains the origin of flint, and leaves Thor with a permanent, painful reminder of his battles. The atmosphere in Valhalla is usually one of boisterous joy, clattering shields, roasting pork, and flowing mead. But on this day, the mood is tense. A guest is sitting at the high table, in Odin's own seat, and he is drunk. This guest is Hrungnir. He is the strongest of all the giants. His head is made of stone. His heart is a jagged, three-cornered piece of hard stone. And he is angry. He came to Asgard after a race. Odin, riding his 8-legged steed Sleipnir, had challenged Hrungnir to a horse race. Hrungnir rode his own horse, Gullfaxi, Golden Mane. They raced across the sky and over the sea. Odin won, darting through the gates of Asgard first. But Hrungnir, in the heat of the chase, followed him right through the divine gates. The laws of hospitality demanded that Odin offer him a drink. But Hrungnir did not know when to stop. He drained the huge bowls that were usually reserved for Thor. The mead went to his stony head. Now he is shouting. He stands on the table, swaying. "I will pick up Valhalla," he roars. "I will carry it to Jotunheim. I will sink Asgard into the sea. I will kill all you gods, except for Freya and Sif. I will take them home with me." Freya, the only one brave enough to approach him, pours him more mead, trying to keep him occupied. But the other gods are terrified. They whisper the name of the only one who can handle this. "Call him," they say. "Call the warden." And as if summoned by their fear, the doors of Valhalla burst open. Thor stands there. He has just returned from the east. He is still smelling of the sea and giant blood. He sees the giant standing on his father's table. He hears the threat against his wife, Sif. "Why is this dog drinking here?" Thor demands, his voice low and dangerous. "Who gave him permission to be in Valhalla?" Hrungnir looks at Thor. He is drunk, but he is not stupid. He knows he cannot fight Thor inside the hall without his weapons. "Odin invited me," Ragnir sneers. "I am under his protection." "You will regret that invitation before you leave," Thor promises, raising Mjölnir. "It would be a cowardly act," Ragnir taunts, "to kill an unarmed guest. But if you want to fight, meet me at the border. Meet me at Gitangarður, the stone fences. I left my shield and my whetstone at home. If I had my weapons, we would duel now. But if you kill me while I am unarmed, you are a god of shame." Thor pauses. He has never been challenged to a formal duel, a holmgang, by a giant before. Usually, it is just a brawl. This is a matter of honor. "I accept," Thor says. "Go get your rocks. I will meet you at the border." Ragnir rides away on Gulfaxi. The news spreads through Jotunheim. The giants are excited, but also worried. Ragnir is their champion. If he falls, Thor will be unstoppable. So, the giants devise a plan to distract Thor. They build a clay man. They heap up clay and mud at the dueling ground to create a giant named Mokkur Kalfi. He is 9 leagues tall and 3 leagues wide. He is terrifying to look at. But they cannot find a heart big enough for him, so they put the heart of a mare inside his chest. And when Thor arrives, the clay giant is trembling with fear, his mare heart fluttering. Thor arrives with his servant, Thialfi. Thialfi sees the clay giant and Ragnir. Ragnir is standing on his shield, because he heard Thor might come from underground. He holds a massive whetstone, a sharpening stone, over his shoulder like a club. Thialfi runs ahead. "You are standing wrong, giant," Thialfi shouts. "Thor is not coming from above. He is coming from below. He will attack you through the earth." Ragnir, panicked, throws his shield under his feet to protect himself from below. Now he is standing on his shield, but he has no protection for his body. Then the storm breaks. Thor does not come from below. He comes from the clouds. He rides the thunder. He descends in a blaze of lightning, Mjölnir raised high. Ragnir sees him. He realizes he has been tricked. He grips his massive whetstone with both hands. As Thor throws the hammer, Ragnir throws the stone. The 2 weapons meet in midair. Crack! The sound is deafening. Mjölnir, the divine iron, smashes into the whetstone. The stone shatters. One part of it falls to the earth, creating all the flint rocks that men use to make fire. The other part, a jagged shard, flies through the air and strikes Thor in the forehead. But Mjölnir does not stop. It continues its trajectory. It smashes into Ragnir's skull. The giant's head explodes. He falls. But as he falls, his massive stone leg lands across Thor's neck. Thor is pinned. He is on the ground, the dead giant's leg pressing the life out of him. The shard of whetstone is lodged deep in his skull, blood pouring down his face. Thialfi easily kills the trembling clay giant, Mokkur Kalfi, whose mare heart made him useless. Then he runs to help his master. He pulls at the leg. He cannot move it. Other gods arrive. Odin comes. He pulls. The leg does not move. Even the combined strength of the Aesir cannot lift the dead weight of Ragnir. Then a small figure steps forward. It is Magni, Thor's son with the giantess Jarnsaxa. He is 3 nights old. The toddler walks up to his father. He looks at the giant's leg. He grabs it with his tiny hands, and without a grunt of effort, he lifts the massive limb and throws it aside. Thor sits up, gasping for air. He looks at his son. "A pity I didn't come sooner, father," Magni says in a clear voice. "I would have punched his head off with my fist if I had met him." Thor beams with pride. "You will be strong," he says. He gives the giant's golden-maned horse, Gulfaxi, to his son as a reward, much to Odin's annoyance, who wanted the horse for himself. But the victory comes with a price. The shard of stone is still stuck in Thor's head. They return to Thrudheim. Thor is in pain. They call for a seeress, a wise woman named Groa. She begins to sing magic songs, Galdur, over Thor to loosen the stone. As she sings, the stone begins to move. It is working. Thor feels the pressure easing. To encourage her, to make her happy so she finishes the spell, Thor decides to tell her a story. "You know," Thor says through the pain, "I met your husband recently, Urvandil the Brave. I carried him across the freezing rivers in a basket on my back. One of his toes stuck out of the basket and froze. I broke it off and threw it into the sky. Look up, Groa. That star, that is Urvandil's toe." Thor expects her to be pleased, but Groa is so overcome with joy at hearing her husband is alive that she forgets her magic. Her mind wanders. The song stops. The spell is broken. The stone stops moving. It does not come out. The shard of Hrungnir's weapon remains lodged in Thor's skull. And so, the myth tells us, it remains there until Ragnarök. It is a constant irritation, a piece of the enemy embedded in the mind of the protector. The Norse people believed that one should never throw a whetstone across the floor, for when the stone hits the wood, the shard in Thor's head moves, and the god winces in pain. This story reveals the gritty reality of Thor's life. He wins, yes, but he bleeds. He gets pinned. He carries the debris of his battles in his very flesh. He is not an untouchable deity of light. He is a scarred warrior of the trenches. But Thor is not always armed. There are times when he is stripped of his greatest advantages and must rely on something else. Our next tale takes us to the darkest, most treacherous journey of all, a journey where Loki betrays him, and Thor must walk into the house of a torturer without his hammer, his belt, or his gloves. This is the Saga of Geirröd, and it is a story of boiling rivers and chairs that try to crush the spine. We have seen the thunder god triumphant. We have seen him drinking the tides and fishing for monsters. We have seen him crushing skulls with a weapon that cannot break. But true heroism and true terror is not found in the moments when you are holding the ultimate weapon. It is found when you are holding nothing. The Saga of Geirröd is unique in the Norse corpus because it strips Thor of his identity. It takes away the hammer. It takes away the belt. It takes away the gloves. It asks a fundamental question. Is Thor still the god of thunder without the thunderbolt? The story begins, as tragedy often does in Asgard, with a bird. Loki, bored with the safety of the golden halls, takes the falcon feather cloak of Freya once again. He flies out for amusement. He flies to the grim, rocky courtyards of a giant named Geirröd. He lands on a high window ledge peering into the great hall, his bird eyes sharp with curiosity. Geirröd, sees the bird. He notices that it does not flutter or fear. He orders a servant to catch it. The wall is high and slippery. Loki watches the servant struggling to climb up, laughing to himself, thinking he will fly away at the very last second. It is his classic hubris. He waits too long. As he spreads his wings to launch, his feet are snagged. The servant brings the bird to Geirrod. The giant looks into the falcon's eyes and sees the intelligence of a god. He demands the bird speak. Loki remains silent, so Geirrod locks him in a chest, a wooden box. He leaves him there for 3 months. No food, no water, no light, just the darkness and the gnawing hunger. At the end of 3 months, Geirrod opens the lid. Loki is broken. He is starving. He is ready to bargain, and the price Geirrod demands is specific and terrifying. "Bring me Thor," the giant says, but not the Thor of the legends. Bring him without his hammer, without his strength belt, without his iron gloves. Bring him to me naked of his power. Loki swears the oath. He is released. He flies back to Asgard, his mind already spinning the web of lies. He finds Thor. He does not speak of traps, he speaks of a challenge. "Thor," Loki says, his voice smooth as oil, "I have found a giant, Geirrod, who is a true warrior, but he is a strangely honorable sort. He says he wants to meet you, man to man. No magic weapons, just strength against strength. He says you Aesir rely too much on your toys." Thor, whose pride is easily stung, especially after the illusions of Utgard, listens. The idea of a fair fight, a test of pure physical prowess without reliance on Mjölnir, appeals to his vanity. He agrees. He leaves his heavy iron gloves on the shelf. He unbuckles the belt Mjölnir. He leaves the crusher resting on its stone plinth. They set out, just the two of them, walking into the teeth of the storm unarmed. But the Norns, the weavers of fate, rarely leave Thor completely unprotected. On the way to Geirrod's land, they stop at a small, remote dwelling. It belongs to a giantess named Grid. Grid is a mysterious figure. She is of the giant clan, yet she is the mother of Vidar, the silent god, one of Odin's sons. She represents the wild, protective aspect of the earth, much like Thor's own mother. She welcomes Thor. She gives him food. And then, while Loki is sleeping or distracted, she pulls Thor aside. She whispers the truth into his ear. "Do not trust him," Grid says, nodding towards Loki. "And do not trust Geirrod. He is a dog-wise giant, a torturer. If you go to his hall without weapons, you will never leave." Thor looks at his empty hands. He cannot turn back. His honor is pledged. Grid opens a chest. "Take these," she says. "They are not yours, but they are old and strong." She hands him her own belt of strength. It is rougher than his, made of old leather and roots, but it thrums with power. She hands him her own iron gloves, pitted with age, but solid. And finally, she hands him a staff. It is not a hammer. It is a pole made of magical wood, known as Gridarvol, Grid's staff. "Use the staff," she warns. "It will save you." Thor thanks her. He buckles on the borrowed belt. He feels the strength return, a different kind of strength, wilder, earthier. He takes the staff. He wakes Loki and they continue. Loki does not notice the borrowed gear, or perhaps he chooses not to see it. They reach the border of Geirrod's land. A massive river blocks their path. It is the river Vimur. It is the largest river in the mythic world, a torrent of freezing, gray water that roars like a dying beast. They must cross. Thor steps into the water. It comes to his knees. He places the staff, Griddervol, against the current to brace himself. Loki, terrified of the rushing water, clings to the belt at Thor's waist, hanging on like a frightened child. They wade deeper. The water rises to Thor's waist, then to his chest. The current is unnaturally strong. It feels heavy, thick, pushing against them with malicious intent. Thor looks upstream. He sees the cause of the flood. Standing astride the canyon walls, high up in the mountains, is a giantess. It is Yalp, the daughter of Geirrod. She is straddling the river, and she is releasing her fluids into the water. She is urinating, or perhaps menstruating into the stream, summoning a torrent of bodily filth and magic to drown the god. The water is now at Thor's shoulders. Loki is screaming, his head barely above the surface. If the river rises another inch, they will be swept away into the abyss. Thor's anger flares. He recites a line of poetry, a spell of binding. "Wax not, Vimur, for I must wade to the giant's home." He sees a large stone in the riverbed. He grabs it. He looks up at the giantess Yalp. "At the source," he roars. "The river must be stemmed." He throws the stone. It flies through the mist and the spray. It strikes the giantess with perfect, brutal accuracy, plugging the source of the torrent. The flow of magic is broken. But Thor is still trapped in the rushing water. He sees a rowan tree hanging over the bank. He reaches up. He catches a branch with his borrowed iron gloves. With a massive heave, he pulls himself and the sputtering Loki out of the river of filth. To this day, the Norse say, the rowan is the salvation of Thor. It is a holy tree. They are wet, cold, and exhausted, but they have arrived. They walk up to Geirrod's hall. It is a dark, foreboding place, smelling of soot and iron. They are not greeted by the host. Instead, servants shove them into a goat shed, a small guest room filled with straw. There is only one piece of furniture in the room, a single high seat, a chair. Loki curls up in the straw, shivering. Thor sits on the chair. He rests his hands on the armrests, holding the staff Griddervol. He closes his eyes, trying to rest. Suddenly, he feels movement. The chair is rising. He looks down. Under the chair, pushing it upward, are the two daughters of Geirrod, Yalp and Grape. They are using their giant strength to lift the chair, intending to crush Thor's skull against the stone rafters of the ceiling. Thor feels his head brush the roof beams. The pressure is building. His neck is bending. He does not panic. He grips the staff Griddervol. He plants the tip of the staff against the rafters above him. He pushes. He channels the power of the borrowed belt. He pushes down with the force of a hydraulic press. The chair is caught between the immovable roof and the unstoppable god. Something has to give. Crunch. A sickening sound echoes in the small room. It is the sound of spines snapping. The daughters scream once, then fall silent. Their backs are broken. The chair drops back to the floor. Thor sits there in the silence, grim and terrible. He has survived the water. He has survived the trap. Now, he wants the father. The door opens. Gerod calls them into the main hall for games. The hall is lined with fires, great long fires burning down the length of the room. Gerod stands at the far end. He does not hold a sword. He holds a pair of tongs. He reaches into the fire and pulls out a bolt of iron. It is glowing white hot. It is dripping with molten heat. Without a word, Gerod throws the molten iron at Thor. It moves like a lightning bolt. Loki dives for cover, but Thor does not dodge. He cannot dodge. To dodge would be to show fear. He raises his hand, the hand wearing the borrowed iron glove of Grid. He catches the missile. Hiss. The sound of the white-hot metal hitting the cold iron glove screams through the hall. Smoke rises from Thor's palm. The heavy iron slug is stopped dead in midair. Geirrod's eyes widen in horror. He realizes his mistake. He realizes that even without his hammer, Thor is still the god of the forge fires. The giant runs. He dives behind a massive stone pillar seeking cover. Thor takes a step forward. He weighs the glowing bolt in his hand. He winds up. He throws. The bolt flies across the hall. It strikes the stone pillar. It does not stop. It punches through the solid rock as if it were wet paper. It punches through the giant Gerod hiding behind it. It punches through the wall of the fortress behind him, and it buries itself deep in the earth outside. Gerod falls, a smoking hole in his chest. Thor stands amidst the smoke and the silence. He looks at Loki. Loki is pale, realizing how close he came to death, and realizing once again that you cannot kill the storm. Thor drops the borrowed staff. He has survived the unarmed journey. He has proven that the power does not come from the weapon. The weapon is merely a conduit for the power. He returns to Grid, returns her gifts with thanks. And then he returns to Asgard. He walks to his hall, Mjölnir. He picks up Mjölnir. He buckles on Mjölnir. He is whole again. But the tone of his life is changing. The adventures are becoming darker. The enemies are becoming more desperate. The shadows of Ragnarök are lengthening. And now, Thor must face a different kind of challenge. Not a challenge of strength, but a challenge of wisdom. He must protect his daughter, Thrud, from an unwanted suitor. And this suitor is not a giant, but a creature of the earth, a dwarf who claims to know everything. This brings us to the poem Alvismal, the talk of the all-wise. It is here that we see Thor not as a warrior, but as a father, and as a cunning intellect who uses the sun as his weapon. The hall of Mjölnir is usually a place of noise, of feasting, of metal striking metal, of the roaring laughter of the thunder god. But tonight, the hall is quiet. The fires have burned down to glowing embers. The shadows are long and still. Thor returns home from his wanderings. He is tired. He leans his hammer, Mjölnir, against the wall. He unbuckles the belt of strength. He expects peace. He expects the warm embrace of his wife, Sif, and the safety of his family. But there is a stranger in the house, Standing in the center of the room is a figure. He is small, pale, with a nose that is crooked, and skin that looks like it has never seen the light of day. He is a dwarf, but he stands with an arrogance that fills the room. His name is Alvis, the All-Wise. He looks at Thor, who towers over him like a mountain over a pebble, and he does not flinch. "I have come to claim my bride," Alvis announces. "The deal was made. The stones are set. Thrud shall be mine. Thrud, Thor's daughter, the goddess of power, the apple of her father's eye." Thor's hand twitches towards the hammer. His first instinct, as always, is violence. To crush this intruder who dares to think he can take a daughter of the Aesir down into the dark, damp earth. But Thor stops. He looks at the dwarf. Alvis is unarmed. He is a guest, technically. To kill him without cause would be a stain on Thor's honor. And there is something else. The myth implies that a promise was made, perhaps by the other gods while Thor was away, perhaps a debt incurred in some forgotten wager. Thor cannot simply murder the engagement. He must break it legally. He must outwit the suitor. "I was not present when this deal was struck," Thor growls, his voice like grinding stones. "I am the father, and as the father, I have the final say. But I will not be unreasonable. You call yourself all-wise. So let us test this wisdom." Thor steps closer, looming over the dwarf. "I will give you my consent," Thor lies, "if you can answer my questions. Tell me, Alvis, dwarf of the deep, tell me about the worlds. I want to know the names of all things in all the realms." The dwarf smiles. He is caught in his own vanity. He believes he knows everything. He does not see the trap. He does not see that Thor is not testing his knowledge. He is testing the horizon. Thor points to the ground. "Tell me, Alvis, what is this earth called? What do men call it? What do the Aesir call it? What do the giants call it?" Alvis puffs out his chest. He begins to recite. "Men call it earth," he says. "The Aesir call it the field. The Vanir call it the way. The giants call it the deep green. The elves call it the growing one. The high gods call it the clay." Thor nods slowly. He asks another question. "And the sky, what is it called?" "Men call it heaven." Alvis chants, entranced by his own voice. "The gods call it the height. The giants call it the upworld. The elves call it the fair roof. The dwarves call it the dripping hall." Question after question. Thor keeps him talking. He asks about the moon. He asks about the sun. He asks about the clouds, the wind, the calm, the sea, the fire, the wood, the night. The contest becomes a mesmerizing catalogue of the Norse cosmos. It is an encyclopedia of poetic metaphors. The dwarf reveals the hidden language of the universe. He speaks of the wind home, and the sea sun, and the wolf terror. But Thor is not listening to the answers. He is listening to the silence outside. He is watching the slit of the window. He is waiting. The questions go on. "Tell me of the night," Thor asks. "Tell me of the seed." Alvis answers them all. He is brilliant. He is a scholar of the highest order. He proves that he is indeed the all-wise. But he lacks one crucial piece of wisdom. He has forgotten to watch the time. Thor asks his final question. I have never seen so much ancient wisdom in one breast, Thor says, his voice softening. But tell me one last thing. He points to the eastern window. What is that light? Alvis turns. The sun has risen. The first ray of dawn, the Divalin's deceiver, cuts through the gloom of the hall. It strikes the dwarf full in the face. In Norse mythology, the dwarves are creatures of the dark earth. They are maggots of the primal flesh given consciousness. The sun is their enemy. When the solar rays hit Alvis, the magic that sustains him calcifies. He freezes. His skin turns gray. His eyes turn blank. His mouth, mid-sentence, hardens. In an instant, the all-wise suitor is gone. In his place stands a statue of stone, a grotesque frozen monument to arrogance. Thor looks at the stone figure. He does not laugh. He simply nods. He has saved his daughter. He has kept his honor, and he has done it not with Mjölnir, but with the inevitable turning of the world. He used the cosmos itself as his weapon. He picks up his hammer. He walks past the statue. The house is safe, but outside the wind is changing. The seasons are turning, and the long summer of the gods is coming to an end. The wisdom of Alvis is preserved in stone, but the prophecy he could have spoken, the prophecy of the end, remains unsaid. Thor steps out into the morning light. But the sun feels weak. It is pale. It gives no heat. Winter is coming. The Fimbul winter. It begins with the cold. Not the seasonal frost of winter, but a cold that penetrates the soul. A cold that freezes the sap in the trees and the blood in the veins. For 3 years, the sun does not rise. For 3 years, the snow falls without ceasing. Brothers fight brothers. The bonds of kinship shatter. The world descends into an age of axes, an age of swords, an age of wolves. This is the Fimbul winter, the great winter. In Asgard, the gods are gathered. They are old now. Their golden age is over. They know what is coming. Hamadal, the Watcher, stands on the Bifrost Bridge. He lifts the Gjallarhorn to his lips. He blows. The sound is not a call to assembly. It is a scream. It wakes the sleepers in the earth. It shakes the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil. The fate is unsealed. The wolf, Fenrir, breaks his chains. The great wolf swallows the sun. The moon is devoured. The stars fall from the sky like dying sparks. And in the ocean, the deep black ocean, the enemy wakes up. Jormungandr, the Midgard Serpent, the beast of the abyss, releases its tail from its mouth. It has grown. It is now so large that its thrashing causes tidal waves that drown the continents. It crawls onto the land. It sprays poison into the sky and the sea. The ship, Naglfar, made of the fingernails of dead men, sets sail from the east. It is filled with giants. It is captained by Loki, who has broken his own bonds. The armies of chaos gather on the plain of Vigrid, a field 100 leagues wide and 100 leagues long. This is the killing floor. The gods ride out to meet them, Odin, in his golden helmet, rides to fight the wolf. Freyr fights the fire giant Surt. Tyr fights the hound Garm. But Thor has only one target. He does not look at the wolf. He does not look at Loki. He walks through the chaos of the battlefield, his eyes fixed on the horror that is slithering through the poisonous mist. He finds him. Jormungandr rears up. Its head is in the clouds. Its mouth is a cavern of dripping venom. Its scales are like shields of black iron. It hisses, and the sound is like the escaping steam of 1,000 volcanoes. This is the rematch. There is no boat this time. There is no fishing line. There is no Hymir to cut the rope. Thor does not hesitate. He is the protector. This is what he was born for. This is what every thunderstorm, every giant killing, every contest has prepared him for. He charges. The serpent strikes. It lunges with the speed of a viper. Thor dodges, the wind of the passing head knocking him sideways. He swings Mjölnir. The hammer strikes the serpent's side with a sound like a gong. A scale the size of a shield shatters. The serpent screams. It spits a river of venom. Thor raises his arm, taking the poison on his iron glove. The metal sizzles. The fumes burn his eyes, blinding him. He swings again. Crack. He breaks the serpent's ribs. The monster coils around him. It tries to crush him, to squeeze the life out of the thunder god, just as the cat illusion had tested his back. Thor roars, expanding his chest, fighting the pressure. He is the strongest. He will not yield. He breaks free from the coils. He leaps. He jumps into the air, summoning the last of the lightning. He brings Mjölnir down with every ounce of his Asmagin, every memory of his life, every prayer of the humans who worshipped him. He strikes the serpent squarely on the head. The skull of the world serpent shatters. The impact is so great that it is felt in all 9 worlds. The monster crashes to the ground, dead. The earth shakes one last time. Thor lands. He staggers. He is victorious. The enemy is dead. The protector has fulfilled his oath. He turns to walk away. He intends to go help his father, Odin. He intends to save the rest of the world. He takes one step. He feels a burning in his chest, a cold fire spreading through his veins. He takes a second step. His vision blurs. The world is turning gray. The poison, the eater. The serpent's venom has penetrated his armor, his skin, his very essence. He takes a third step. His legs feel heavy. The hammer, Mjölnir, the faithful companion, slips from his fingers. It falls to the dust of Vigrid with a heavy thud. Fourth step. He coughs. It is blood. Black blood. Fifth step. He hears the voice of Odin fading. He hears the silence returning. Sixth step. He stumbles. He catches himself. He is Thor. He does not crawl. Seventh step. The darkness is closing in. He thinks of Sif. He thinks of his boys, Magni and Modi. He hopes they are safe. He hopes they are strong. Eighth step. He falls to his knees. The strongest knees in the cosmos finally buckle. Ninth step. Thor, the god of thunder, the ward of Asgard, the friend of man, falls forward. His face hits the earth of his mother, Jord. he breathes out one last time, a final rumble of thunder, soft and distant. And then he is gone. The guardian has fallen. Around him, the world burns. Surt flings fire across the earth. The sky turns black. The sea rises to swallow the land. The sun is gone. The gods are dead. It is the end. Or is it? In the silence that follows the destruction, in the darkness of the void, something stirs in the grass. The fire dies down. The sea recedes. A new green earth rises from the waves. And in the tall grass of the new world, waiting to be found, lies a heavy iron object. It is quiet. It is sleeping. But it is waiting for a hand to pick it up. The fire has burned out. The waters have receded. The screaming of the wolf and the hissing of the serpent have faded into the silence of memory. Ragnarök is over. But in the cosmology of the North, the end is never truly the end. It is merely the turning of a page. The poetic Edda tells us that after the destruction, the earth rises a second time from the sea, green and fair. The waterfalls tumble once more. The eagle flies over the mountain, hunting for fish. And on the plains of Idavall, where the great city of Asgard once stood, the survivors gather. They are few. The old gods, Odin, Thor, Tyr, are gone. Their bodies returned to the elements, but the children remain. Walking through the tall grass of this new world come two figures. They are young, vibrant, untouched by the scars of the old wars. They are Magni and Modi, the sons of Thor. Magni, whose name means strength. Modi, whose name means courage. They find each other in the ruins, and there, lying in the grass untouched by the fires of Surt, they find the legacy. Mjölnir. The hammer looks different now. It is no longer just a weapon of war. It is a relic of a lost age. It is heavy with history. In the old world, only Thor could lift it, and even he needed his belt and gloves to wield it fully. But the myths tell us that Magni and Modi pick it up. They lift it together. They do not need the belt. They do not need the iron gloves. They possess the raw, distilled essence of their father. Now, Magni and Modi shall possess Mjölnir, the prophecy says, when Mjölnir's battle is done. They do not use it to fight frost giants, for the giants are gone. They use it to hallow the new world, to bless the new boundaries, to consecrate the new homes of the surviving humans. The hammer returns to its original sacred function, a tool of protection and construction, not just destruction. But while the myth ends there, on the green fields of Idavall, the history of Thor does not. In fact, the death of the gods in mythology only marked the beginning of their immortality in human culture. For 1,000 years, Thor was more than a story. He was a daily reality for the people of Northern Europe. While Odin was the god of the poets and the frenzied elite, Thor was the god of the carl, the free man, the farmer, the sailor. He was the most beloved of all the deities because he was trustworthy. Odin might trick you. Thor would just defend you. We see this devotion in the historical record. When the Roman historian Tacitus wrote about the Germanic tribes in the 1st century, he mentioned that they worshipped Hercules. Scholars believe this was Thor, The Romans saw a strong, club-wielding figure and equated him with their own hero. But this Hercules of the north was Donar, thunder. His worship was centered not in elaborate stone temples, but in the landscape itself. His sacred places were the oak trees. The oak is the tree that is most often struck by lightning, yet it survives. It is strong, deeply rooted, and majestic. The ancient Germanic peoples believed that the god dwelt within the wood. The most famous of these was the Donar's oak in the region of Hesse, in modern-day Germany. For centuries, the tribes gathered there to offer sacrifices, to ask for rain for their crops, and to swear oaths. It stood as a living monument to the power of the storm. But as the centuries turned, a new power arrived from the south, the White Christ. The missionaries brought a new god, one of peace and submission, who stood in stark contrast to the red-bearded thunderer. There is a famous historical account from the 8th century involving Saint Boniface. He traveled to the sacred site of Donar's oak. A great crowd of pagans gathered, watching him, expecting their god to strike him down with lightning if he dared to touch the holy tree. Boniface took an axe. He struck the oak. The wind blew, the tree groaned, and, to the horror of the crowd, it fell. It split into 4 pieces, and there was no thunder, no lightning bolt from the clear sky. This moment is often cited as the death of Thor's cult in Germany. The people saw that their god did not defend his own sanctuary, and many converted. They built a church from the wood of the fallen oak. But Thor did not vanish so easily. In Scandinavia, in the Viking Age, he found a resurgence. In fact, as Christianity began to encroach on the north, Thor became the symbol of resistance. He became the champion of the old way. Archaeology tells us a fascinating story here. In the early Viking period, grave goods are diverse. But as Christian missionaries began wearing crosses around their necks, the followers of the old gods responded. They began to mass-produce their own symbol, the Mjölnir pendant. Thousands of these tiny silver and iron hammers have been found across Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and even in England. They are small, often thumb-sized. Some are intricate, with filigree work. Others are simple iron shapes. They were worn on chains around the neck, a direct counter-symbol to the crucifix. It was a way of saying, I do not belong to the White Christ. I belong to the thunder. We have even found casting molds from this era, stones carved by blacksmiths that have a shape for a cross on one side and a shape for a hammer on the other. The smiths were pragmatic. They sold to both faiths. But it shows how closely these two symbols coexisted. The worshippers of Thor wore these hammers for protection. It was a miniature version of the cosmic weapon. By wearing it, you placed yourself under the god's Var, his pledge of defense. You were asking him to hallow your life, just as he hallowed the bride at the wedding feast. And unlike Odin, who demanded human sacrifice and war, Thor demanded simpler things. He demanded courage, he demanded strength, and he demanded that you keep your word. The ring oaths sworn on the altar rings of Thor were the most binding contracts in Norse law. To break an oath sworn by the hammer was to invite the storm to tear your life apart. Even the days of our week bear his mark. Thursday, Thor's Day. Every time we schedule a meeting or check a calendar, we are speaking his name. In German, it is Donnerstag, Thunder's Day. The echo is embedded in the very structure of our time. But why does he endure? Why, thousands of years after the last sacrifice was burned at Uppsala, do we still feel a thrill when we hear the name Thor? Perhaps it is because he represents something that never truly leaves the human experience. We live in a world that is often chaotic, frightening, and unfair. We face giants of our own, illness, poverty, war, forces that seem too big to fight. Thor is the archetype of the defender. He is the idea that no matter how big the monster is, no matter how cold the winter gets, there is a force that stands between us and the darkness. He is the one who does not retreat. He is the one who wades across the freezing river, who catches the impossible bolt of iron, who looks the serpent in the eye and does not blink. He is the comfort of the storm. Listen to the sound of thunder one last time. In the modern world, we understand it as atmospheric pressure, as electrical discharge. But close your eyes. Forget the science for a moment. Feel the vibration in your chest. That is not just electricity. That is the sound of the chariot wheels rolling over the clouds. That is the sound of Tangrisnir and Tanjoster grinding their teeth. That is the sound of the guardian making his rounds, ensuring that the walls hold, that the harvest is safe, and that the shadows stay where they belong. The myths may be stories. The temples may be ruins. The oak trees may have rotted away. But the thunder remains, and as long as the storm rolls in from the sea, turning the sky the color of a bruise and smelling of ozone and rain, Thor lives. Magni has the strength. Modi has the courage. But the memory belongs to us. Thank you for journeying with me through the 9 worlds, from the plains of Thrudvangur to the depths of the ocean, from the halls of the giants to the twilight of the gods. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the complete life of Thor, and if you found peace in the presence of the storm, please leave a like and subscribe to Hearths of Myths. May your walls be strong, may your hearth be warm, and may you always have the strength to lift whatever burden life places in your path. Sleep well.